uh, studio style. Hindi na tayo nandyan sa underground. Kamusta naman kayo dyan? Naka-follow up naman kayo siguro dun sa mga updates natin kahapon. Especially yung pinost natin from on the ground, no? From on the ground, dumaan lang tayo. O hindi tayo naka-pink, hindi tayo with any political slogan, etc. Dumaan tayo kahapon at para naman makita yung show of force, no? Hindi yung opinion, sorry, on opinion, pero yung show of force, actual force, yung warm bodies on the ground ng LENI Robredo camp ng opposition. At nakita natin na I think numbers of, hindi onion, no? I mean, sorry, opinion. Hindi opinion of the numbers, as in real numbers, no? Ay mukhang 80,000 to even 100,000 yatang ang umabot na talagang mga supporters ni Vice President, duly elected Vice President Leni Robredo kahapon na dumalo dyan sa PASIG, sa Ortigas area. Grabe, punong-puno yata yung area based on some of the aerial shot. Ayan, talaga nag-aerial shot na, di ba? Nakita natin, ang dami nandyan. Mukhang si Ariana Grande ba yan na nag-share nung videos na kung saan kinakanta yung kanta niya, di ba? Tuwan-tuwa, pati si Ariana Grande, no? Ibang level, ibang level. O yan, sabi nung isa, bayaran daw si Ariana Grande. Ayan tayo, ayan tayo. Pero talagang show of force. Grabe, hanggang gabi yata sila eh. Kasi nung pauwi ako from dinner with family, gabi na yun, 11 p.m., traffic na traffic pa rin yung area. Ang dami pa rin nagsiuwian. So many people were there. So shout out dyan sa inyong lahat, no? At may mga naka-recognize po yata sa atin kahit naka-mask tayo, no? At yun nga, naka-picture yung iba sa atin. O yan ha, hindi ako naka hindi ako naka-pink or anything like that. Oh. 137,000 daw dumalo. Sabi ko nga, easily 100,000. At parating nilang sinasabi, hindi kami bayad. yung dumadaan kami, hindi kami bayaran, mga ganon. Or hindi binayaran yung taxi namin, or hindi binayaran yung budget namin, ganon. At, I mean, based on the, I would say, preliminary observation I've had, very diverse yung crowd, yung rally supporters. But I would say, mukhang a lot of them were middle-class Filipinos. I think I saw a lot of middle-class Filipinos, a lot of young Filipinos, a lot of Gen Z Filipinos, a lot of millennial Filipinos, and of course, senior citizens, very passionate about what's happening. People who remember the actual horrible situation during martial law period. So it was a very diverse crowd, but I would say a lot of it was middle-class, very middle-class. At dito mo makita na talaga siguro may basihan yung ibang surveys na sinasabi na talagang malakas yung laban ni Leni at saka BBM dito sa NCR, no? Because I think if you look at the Pulse Asia, ang hina ni Leni sa NCR. But some of the other surveys, I think Publicos Asia, the earlier one they did is parang dikit ang laban between Bongbong Marcos and Leni. So I think it's important for the opposition to have a show of force, to really bring warm bodies at ipakita talaga na hindi lang kami silent, but we're actually vocal, we're willing to show our love and support and all, and we're going to be solid through and through for these elections and beyond. No? So mahalaga yan kasi alam natin, surveys are surveys. Ang dami naman kalye survey. Sabi ko nga kahapon, magkalye survey tayo dyan sa kalye kung saan yung mga nagrarally yung mga pink supporters. Alam mo na ang mangyaring, diba? Yan ang problema sa mga kalye survey din eh. Pero I think sa dami ng surveys, at daming issues around surveys and all, I don't think surveys have the kind of, I would say, the political impact that they used to have. I think back in the day, every time may survey na lumalabas, talagang pinag-usapan, ang laking issue, ina-analyze. Ngayon, parang it's easy na for people, depending on what side, to dismiss it. So, yung mga BBM supporters, a lot of them are dismissive of the fact that Pulse Asia actually projected Leni to be the winner of 2016 elections. Of course, conveniently in-ignore yan. And then of course, we see the kind of a mirror image of that more recently kung saan BBM is doing better. Biglang proud na proud yung mga BBM supporters and mga others to cite Pulse Asia. So, let's choose, diba? Let's choose our opinion, sorry, not onion. And then, of course, nakikita din natin sa mga supporters ni Leni, ang dami sa kanila galit sa surveys, shooting the messenger sometimes. Ibang level. So I think the surveys are losing the kind of traction, the kind of impact that they used to have, no? At makikita mo dun sa mga ibang tao na parang sinasabi, oy, leading pa rin yata si Bongbong Marcos, but parang hindi sila ganun ka-sure as before. Parang before, pag talagang sinabi mo leading isang candidate sa surveys, wow, so yung mga bandwagoners, yung mga walang strong opinion, yung mga nakikiuso, nakikipa-cute lang, or nadadala lang sa pa-cute ng mga ibang candidates at hindi talaga nagbibigay ng sapat na attention para pag-aralan, yung talaga yung kakayahan ng mga kandidato, etc. Yung mga bandwagoners na yan, ay marami po sila. Maraming undecided, maraming bandwagoners, maraming pre-ideological or post-ideological, depending on how you want to portray them. And I cannot blame them dahil wala nga tayong totoong party system dito sa Pilipinas. Nako po, ano bang mga real parties natin? Meron ba tayong katulad ng Social Democrats in Germany or CDU or etc. or even the French style na Socialist Party, PS or versus, you know what I'm saying, or even US level na hindi ganong kataas yung level. Even sa US level, yung Republican versus Democrats, more or less may idea ka anong difference. Dito sa Pilipinas, hindi ganon ka-clear. It's really a fight among personalities, among families. I think anthropologists have a term for that. Ang tawag nila sa dyan is heroic societies. So we are heroic society kung saan ang labanan dito is our heroes, no? Or sometimes our trapos. Labanan ng trapos and all. And of course, sometimes, the trapos will try to denigrate whoever is not trapo like them and questioning them as saying, ay, mahina mga yan, ay, bayaran mga yan, ay, tuta ng mga foreign powers yan, etc., etc. So I cannot blame why a lot of ordinary Filipinos, hindi sila nag-approach sa elections in an ideological sense along party lines because we don't have ideologically based mainstream political parties. We do have party lists and smaller parties which are ideologically cohesive and driven. Alam natin, mga Makabayan Bloc, Akbayan, among others. These are progressive groups, some of them more left in the political spectrum. But tignan mo yung mainstream parties. Even yung Liberal Party, kamusta naman, di ba? Ano ba talagang ideology nila? Do they have a cohesive ideology and vision of how to push the country forward? Compare Liberal Party, for instance, to Democratic Party in the US, right? Or compare the Liberal Party of the Philippines, for instance, to the CDU Party, for instance, of former Chancellor Angela Merkel, right? Or even compare them to, for instance, the Conservatives or Lib Dems in UK. Wala yung level ng ideological differentiation, yung level ng internal policy cohesiveness, grand vision for the country, wala talaga. So we're still a heroic society. And I'll be very, very honest, the people who showed up for LENI kahapon, base sa mga, yung pagmamarites natin, narinig natin yung mga sinasabi nila or yung mga limited interaction is, they're there for LENI. They're not there for quote-unquote Dilawan, Liberal Party. No, they're there for LENI. They're there for LENI, and yes, of course, Kiko and of course Riza Hontiveros and other progressive folks in the slate. But they're really there for LENI. This is about LENI. This is about them seeing LENI as the alternative to a Marcos 2.0 situation, as the best way to prevent a Marcos 2.0 situation. And to be honest, if Isko, for instance, I think doesn't pick up as well. Pag-usapan natin shortly, may Mocha Oson angle pa yan. Mukhang LENI will emerge as the alternative talaga to BBM. So magiging two-way fight na talaga ito come election day. Now, whether this will be a tight two-way fight or a lopsided one, of course, di ba? I mean, things could still change. Sabi ko nga, in the next 2 weeks, actually 1.5 weeks na, kasi napakamahalaga for Isko and LENI to really change the game and bring something to the table na talagang yung mga undecided, yung mga soft supporters, of course, ni BBM frontrunners, they'll have second thoughts na, no? So yan, kaya nakikita natin na for instance si Isko, I think may Mocha Uson factor na ngayon. Is that an indication that President Duterte will be next? Kasi andyan na si Evardone, andyan na si Mocha Uson, so is President Duterte the next? Or baka Bongo ba is next before President Duterte? Let's see. But, the train may leave the station, no? I mean, time is not necessarily on Isko's side. He has a week or two to really make a significant change. Otherwise, yung mga ibang supporters ni Isko na not necessarily fond of BBM, they might go to LENI, right? But my contention is the same. For BBM's numbers to really drop significantly, it's going to be to Isko's benefit, right? So it's really up to Isko to cut into the lead that BBM got because of the huge level of overlap between Isko and BBM base, no? While I don't see as much between Lenny and BBM. So, hindi ka makahanap ng Lenny supporter ang second preference ay BBM. Malabo yan. The same way, malabo makahanap ng BBM supporter na ang second choice Lenny. There may be fewer, but I doubt. I think it's mostly Isko. We see that in anecdotal evidence. We see that in some of the meso surveys. So yon. So klarong-klaro tayo, dapat tayo dyan, di ba? So, but, I think it's really important for Lenny to keep on continuing these grand rallies, to tell the supporters to keep the faith, to tell the donors and sponsors, mukhang marami naman silang sponsors and supporters din, to keep, backing the campaign, not giving up, not to be fatalistic, hindi pa tapos ang laban. And sabi ko nga and I know this is a controversial point, but this is politics. You have to be ready for all eventualities. You have to be really ready for all eventualities. Kaya sabi ko, what BBM will become depends also on how big he will win, right, in these elections. So even if hindi manalong ni si Lenny, mahalaga yung margin. Sa akin palagay, kung malaki talaga yung margin, yung tipong 70% si Bongbong Marcos or 80%, hindi naman siguro 80% based on second, but let's say 60 to 70%, I think Bongbong Marcos might show us a different side, a much more self-assured, self-assertive, self-certain side. Talagang, wag natin makalimutan yung huling picture nila Marcos dun sa veranda sa Malacanang, tignan mo yung suot ni Bongbong Marcos. Naka-military fatigue siya. May special forces, may military training itong taong to. And yes, he has this avuncular, laid-back, charming kind of image nowadays, especially on TikTok and all. But, we know that Bongbong Marcos was a kind of the hardliner guy, the hawkish guy towards the end of the Marcos dictatorship. So I won't underestimate him. If he gets 60-70% landslide, suddenly sabi niya, alam mo ba, all these years, I'm in the sidelines, I'm in the shadows of strong women, etc. Now is my time to assert myself. So do not underestimate Bongbong Marcos at do not underestimate the importance of the margins in this race. Hindi lang mahalaga sino mananalo, but gaano kalaki yung panalo. Mahalaga talaga yan. Kaya yung opposition, kung opposition kayo, regardless, win or lose, show up maximum because the margins will have an impact on how the next president will act. I don't think there's a clear, definitive blueprint of how Bongbong Marcos will run this country. I don't think so. I think it will depend on many factors. So one factor is the margins, the margins, the gap, the decisiveness of the win or not, or the indecisiveness of the win. Kung masyadong close and all, baka medyo maging mas ingat si Bongbong Marcos, magiging mas cautious si Bongbong Marcos. I call that the minimalist scenario. So, abangan nyo yung column ko on this issue, yung mga 3 scenarios under a potential Bongbong Marcos presidency. Again, everything can change. A lot can change. We're seeing a lot of changes on the ground. But still, mahalaga na win or lose, maraming magpakita dyan sa come election day because the margins will matter. The margins will matter. So, a minimalist Bongbong Marcos will happen. I think if the opposition closes the gap as much as possible. And mahalaga ito, may totoong opposition leadership and may cohesive, nationwide, solid opposition movement. Yan po ang wala nung nanalo si Pangulong Duterte. Nung nanalo po si Pangulong Duterte, sino po ang leader of opposition? Lenny was already besieged. She was still, trying to, warm up to her seat. She was trying to navigate this extremely difficult situation as a cabinet ka ni Duterte pero hindi ka sang-ayon dun sa EJ case and mga iba't ibang policies. So ipit si Lenny. Saan naman si Marroas? Of course, Marroas had to go into some sort of spiritual retreat. I don't know what he was doing. I think, no offense. I mean, I understand. The presidential race is a very, very tough one. So you really need spiritual recovery afterwards, no? Especially if it were so polarized and difficult and all. So I'll be very honest. And then more than that, maraming tao takot. Yes, alam natin, aminado tayo na maraming tao yun ang takot dun sa with all the climate of fear and drug war, etc. But this time could be different. This time could be very, very different. That even if Bongbong Marcos wins, if the opposition has a clear, inspiring leadership, has a kind of a vision and narrative for the country that really mobilizes people from all across the country, all classes, then I think it can have an impact. Because you cannot have a real democracy if you don't have a robust opposition. I think everyone will agree with me on that, unless ang gusto mo ay dictatorship or fascism, right? So this is one thing that we have to keep in mind. Kaya nga, yung supporters ni Leni, come win or lose, importante yung margins, importante yung cohesiveness of the opposition or the next administration if Leni wins. Mahalaga yan because, I mean, the same way, if Leni wins, pero wala siyang base, hindi strong yung support, ang kalaban niya, puro mga trapo nandun na sa mga iba't ibang branches ng government. Let's be honest. Leni might win the executive, pero kamusta naman yung mga ibang branches, di ba? So Leni will need a strong movement behind her, whether as the next president of the Philippines or as the definitive leader of the opposition. So yun, mahalaga talaga yung issue na yan, no? And at the same time, I think mahalaga din how well Sara Duterte will perform. I think if Sara Duterte performs also very decisively, then I think the House of Duterte, especially Duterte, Sara Duterte, could be more assertive in a Marcos Duterte administration especially. And I think Sara will push for more say, for more influence. And that's where Marcos might settle for a more kind of a, what in political science you call consociational or collective leadership. So it's possible that even if Bongbong Marcos wins, but if Sara does very well, and alam natin, the Sara all effect in Mindanao is one reason, one big reason why Bongbong Marcos went from number 3 in the second quarter of last year and only around 13%, 15% support to now 40% support. Sara contributed a lot to that. So later on, the negotiations, consensus building, the dynamics within House of Duterte and House of Marcos, Arroyo and other power brokers, that will be very important in determining anong magiging next administration. No? So yun ang second important element to keep in mind. And then the third element, of course, is if Bongbong wins super big margin, as I said, he might go a more maximalist way. He might try to assert a vision. No, I don't think we're going to be dictatorship because the 20th century style dictatorship is laos na yan, laos na yan. No one does it anymore. But you see, keep this in mind, keep this in mind. Everyone is talking about Putin ngayon. But you know one of the biggest inventions of Putin, no, before his disastrous intervention in Ukraine, he invented essentially 21st century authoritarianism. So ang ginawa talaga ni Putin was, he created what Farid Zakaria calls illiberal democracy. So meron kang elections, regular elections and all. But alam mo sino man talaga mananalo. Or alam mo naman mahirapan talaga yung opposition. Or alam mo naman yung rule of law ay medyo dodgy, medyo questionable. Alam mo naman yung independence ng civil society, of media, etc. all are under pressure. In fact, to use another term, hybrid regime. So, I don't think, even on the very maximalist situation under Bongbong Marcos, we'll go towards a kind of a dictatorship like we had back in the day. But that doesn't mean that, everything is going to be fine and dandy necessarily. I think the Philippines will move into more of this hybrid situation. And we already are seeing the intimations of that, right? So in short, nothing is final until it's finalized. And the next week or two will be extremely, extremely important in determining yung anong magiging alignments, anong magiging momentum, anong magiging contours of the race in the final stretch of these elections. Napakamahalaga yan. Kaya go pa rin yung supporters of all sides because you really have to show talagang force. You have to show force, you have to flex some muscle. So yun, mahalaga talaga yan. And at the same time, even if manalo si Bongbong Marcos, there's nothing predetermined about how that administration will necessarily move forward. Much will depend on opposition, how cohesive they are. Much will depend also on internal dynamics, consensus building, negotiations, compromises with other power brokers and other allies, especially Sara Duterte, former President Arroyo, among other stalwarts. And then, of course, there's also aspect of international politics, right? Kamustang US, kamustang West. What are they going to do? How are they going to approach Bongbong Marcos? All of these factors are elements. Or also the other side. How will China approach Bongbong Marcos? How supportive will they be of Bongbong Marcos? How confident will be Bongbong Marcos with in terms of standing up or defying the West if he feels that he can count on others, including Russia, including China. So all of those elements are extremely, extremely important. But for now, hindi pa tapos ang laban. Marami pang pwede mangyari. At sabi nga natin, kung meron October surprise sa American elections, meron tayong March surprise. And hindi pa tapos ang March. At yan, let me shift to the next topic very quickly, but I think we have to have a different talk on that. Really, the debates. Pansin nyo, di na ako nag-live after the debates and all. And of course, meron tayong vice presidential race and presidential race COMELEC debates. Pero yun nga, tama naman talaga si Prof. Congressman Walden Bello. Ano naman ang situation na ngayon? COMELEC has to really make sure na all candidates show up, na hindi yung tipong yung mga number one, opo lang sila at pagtawanan lang nila yung mga iba di ba? Hindi naman pwede yan, di ba? Elections are not supposed to be extended inauguration of a frontrunner or anointed